Okay, so this is what my scene actually looks like when I open it without changing anything. And as you can see, it's too bright. So in this video, we're going to go through the lighting I did. Is surprisingly simple. The rendering, like some of the settings that I used, or at least how I went about rendering the sequence as a whole, and the cameras, and also the post processing. So yeah, quite a lot in this video, but I think it's a good end off to this series and very important. So let's look at the lighting. So why is it so bright? The short answer is because I have two directional lights. So if I disable the main one, it'll make more sense. So if I go into lighting, I should delete these. Don't be like me. So if I disable this, these aren't on, by the way. As you can see from the visible tag, it's off. They're not visible. That's why I said I should delete them. Doesn't make a difference. You see? So if I disable this, you'll see the light is actually coming from the right, which does not match the final. This is because I have to use this separate setup for camera 3. So we'll get to that in a second. So let me turn that off, and you can see one more light. Actually, let's click in the scene and press G. So now you can see it a lot more clearly. And where is the, yeah. So if I click this, you can see, you get the idea. I have separate lights for those. So this is how the scene looks without any of those lights. I even have lights for the little fire. All right. There are quite a few lights in there. Okay, so as you can see, I turned them off. And why do we still see the sky? That is because I have an HDRI backdrop, and this is so I can get a custom texture in the sky as opposed to Unreal's default sky. No offense, but that was not good enough for me. So if I turn this off, then it's truly dark. Sometimes Unreal does this thing where it's like bounce light lingers. Not sure why that happens, but trust me, all of the lights are off, and some of the bottles I made emissive so you can see them a lot clearer in the scene. So pitch black, right? Now, as I said, the lighting is pretty simple. So if I turn on the main directional light and the, oops, I did not realize we were there. So these are Unreal's default, clouds, which are not great for me. So if I turn on the HDRI backdrop, you can see now this is the scene that you remember, right? This is the finished product before I make changes in After Effects. So this main light, there are two key things that you'll need to know, because this is not the default main light. I've made some changes. And the main one, this is the main one, is the source angle. Now, if it'll be easier to disable this and bring in a new one so you can see what I'm talking about. So if I bring in a directional light in here, right? And I set the, what's the intensity? 2500, wow. See, D25, right? Good. Give or take. Okay, good. You can see it doesn't look the same, right? Even if I change the angle. If I change the angle, right? And let's say I have it. Oh, wow, that's really similar, right? It doesn't quite look the same, does it? And there are a few reasons for that, right? The main one, as I was saying, are the shadows. So if we look at the shadows, let me just make this a bit more extreme. The lighting isn't supposed to match. I'm trying to show you something particular with these shadows, right? Okay, good. So turn that off. Now, if we look at the shadows, you can see how nice and crispy and sharp they are, which is very consistent with the sun, right? It's very far away and it's a huge light source, etc., etc. Like we understand why the shadows are sharp, but I didn't want that, right? I wanted some more softer and less harsh lighting. And to do that in Unreal, at least, you have to increase the angle of the light source. So as you can see, it's set here to this number 0.5357. So if I bring this up, you'll see the shadows gradually get softer the further they are away from the object. And that's beautiful. Look at that. It looks so much more varied, right? We have sharpness, we have softness, we have the fall off. It looks nice and soft. And you want to be thinking about your scene. This is supposed to be a nice magician's house. It's fall or autumn, depending on how you call it. You know, leaves are falling, the sky is bright, it's windy. It's nice. So it should feel nice in every way. Like every decision you make should help that feeling come through. So that's why I was saying, well, this harshness goes against that. Like I don't, it's too harsh. So let's say I crank this up to 20, which is what I think I have. Now it's like, it's bright, but it's soft. So I'll delete this and we can look at what I did. I think, yeah, it was 20. There are a few other settings like the temperature. So like, you know, you can make it cold, high temperature, or unnecessarily warm, which would not match, you know. But there are a lot of things you could do, and we have a lot other things to get to, so I won't go into that. That was the main thing for this light. So let's look at the backdrop. Oops. So this is an HDRI. If you're watching this video, chances are you know what that is. And it's for lighting the scene based on an image. But in this case, we didn't quite do that. It's really for me to replace the sky in the back. And you can see here, I use this texture. If I'm not mistaken, I got this from HDRI Haven. Classic. I love that site. Shout out. Yeah, so it's like, you know, a 360 image, etc., that you use to cast light into the scene. Again, in this case, I didn't necessarily want it to control the lighting of my scene. I wanted more control myself. So I just used it, as you can see, as a backdrop only. So that's the main light source and the backdrop. So let's move on to what happened earlier when I opened my scene. And all you can see is the extra lighting, like this stuff. So why do I have this, you ask? Let us go through the cameras. It'll all make sense. So I'll go here and yes, I have a few cameras. So let's go to cam 1, right? Wait, that's that's not the cam 1 we know. So let's go to cam 1. This is cam 1. This is the main shot. Beautiful, beautiful. Let's go to cam 2. Very nice. We like this. Oops, let's turn back on that fire. Yeah, much better. Cam 2. We like this. Let's go to cam 4. Wow, that's nice. You can see everything nicely. Same lighting, same setup. And obviously cam 5. No surprise here. But let's go to cam 3. It sucks. Like, because we're looking at the house from this angle, this is the angle the light is coming from roughly. So it's flat. And as a photographer, I couldn't deal with it. And I spoke with my mentor at the time, and he was saying it's completely fine to change the lighting for a particular shot. It's done literally every day in the movies, in film, photography, television, games, and it's a really common practice. And it didn't occur to me to do it here. Sometimes we don't think we can just transfer knowledge like that, so it didn't occur to me, and that's why I decided to try it. And I am so glad. Like, let's turn off that. Right now, let's turn on the new directional light. Oh God, it's beautiful. And the fill lights I put in for the door so you can see the texture, and then on the side just to complete the lighting, right? So this would it looks so different, like ultra harsh lighting, custom beautiful lighting. And it's because we have the same contrast in shadows, light, softness is same to the other shots. So the viewer doesn't really think about it because the effect is similar. It's a little darker. Yes, I accept this. I could have probably brightened the step area a bit more, but anyway, the general feel is the same, and you're not jarred out like you would have been if this was the light. Sorry about that. If this was the light source that we jumped to, a bit intense. So that's why I did the special lighting for shot 3. So let's go back to the main shot. And you want to be making decisions like that as often as you can, because most decisions made for the project, for the feel of the project, will just they add up. All these little things add up. So let's move on to the post-process volume. And this is where we add some effects and post-processing in the engine. Where is that? Good. So as you can see, I have 3 different post-process volumes. Like usually you might end up with more than one. I have 3 because I think I was in a rush at one point and I never went back and combined the settings. So for the main, actually, let's turn off all 3, right? And let's look at this. Now, remember what I was saying earlier about the light and the shadows? So my original light, the main light for this scene, I had adjusted the shadows to be high contrast. But if you go to the camera, let me just go to the camera, it's a bit intense. So I made a post-process volume. And as you can see here, I adjusted a few things. So the first thing is the sharpness, right? I do love a bit of sharpness, especially in my projects, and it's not much. This could have been a lot sharper, as you can see here, but I know I'm gonna add some sharpness in After Effects, so you don't want to overdo it. So that's the first thing. The second thing is I added some bloom. Now if I turn this off, you can see the difference. It's subtle, but again, the point of this scene is to be tranquil, soft, nice, relaxing. Bloom always helps with that. And as I said, if I increased it, it would have been crazy, like a flashback from a soap opera or something ridiculous. But in a subtle way, it's actually quite nice. And without it, the scene suddenly feels just a little more intense. So that's the second thing. I believe the other thing was the exposure. Yes. So this, I don't want to get into a whole Unreal thing, but the exposure here, oh God. The exposure here is manual, which means if I turn this off, Unreal is gonna expose things based on what I'm looking at, right? It's gonna automatically, like in those games where you walk into a room and it gets dark and it slowly gets bright. Yes, it's automatic. So if I go here, it will adjust for this area. Yes, that's my secret cat in the scene. I bet you didn't notice that before. Sorry, I had this enabled. So it will adjust depending on what you're looking at. So we don't usually want that. We want more control, more consistent lighting, like be this bright, period. So you set your metering mode to manual, and that's when we get this. It will be this bright all the time. Like it doesn't matter where we go, the light won't suddenly get brighter or darker. And then from there, you compensate. This is the same term we use in photography, exposure compensation. So it's a setting that you change to basically offset. Like, okay, is this bright wherever we go, but can we get it brighter or darker all the time? So in this case, we made it brighter, but we could have done darker. And now it's this dark all the time. I think you get the idea. So let's move on to the other post-process volume, which is for the fire. You'll notice something here. The fire doesn't look great, right? And this is not a coincidence. Is it a long story? So for the fire, I'm using sprites, right? Particles are being generated, and this square is where the image is for the fire. Now it looks like that because there's a kind of a clash in the ray tracing, I believe. It's how transparency is handled. And as you can see, well, it's not being handled at all here, but I had a setting enabled for the glass. And that's why there's kind of a clash. Do I want better looking glass, or do I want to see my fire? So if I enable this, there was a bit of a glitch there. It didn't register the change that I made, but hopefully you can see now. So you see it affects stuff like sprites and glass at the same time. So enabled, the glass looks a lot worse, but the fire looks nice. And because the fire is more important to me, I left this change on. I left this on. And honestly, I bet you didn't even notice until I brought it up just now. So, there's that. As for the fire, by the way, if we go inside, I have two fires creating smoke. So this fire wouldn't have been strong enough to send the smoke all the way to the top. So I just created a second one. And yeah, that was my clever solution. Okay, so that's the second post-process volume. And the third one, I don't know if you noticed it, but if we enable and disable, there's some subtle changes. Main one being the chromatic aberration. Now, this is overused everywhere, right? And even the amount I put on, some people wouldn't like, but I do like chromatic aberration. It's literally how my logo was created. Like, that's the whole point of my logo. But this is subtle. Like, if I enable and disable it, you can see the edges of the screen. It's just so subtle, and it looks so, but that does a lot. That does a lot. If we disable it and enable it, it just pulls you into the scene a little bit more, because whether we know it or not, we are looking at images that have, not all the time, but there's often imperfections and lens artifacts and all these things. And that's why I like putting it on, because of, I guess, my photography side. So if I can increase the intensity, you'll see something more common, ridiculousness, basically. What I will say is you can increase the effect on the super smaller objects. That's usually looks nice in my opinion. Like if you're ultra zoomed in on something, and you have it on, it feels a bit better. So that's just a little tip. If you like the chromatic, you do not need to do this. Okay, so I'll undo it and keep my subtleness. The reason it's called color grade is because I also made a lot of subtle changes to the shadows before, but then I decided to disable it. Right, you can do a lot of cool things here. As you can see, I can change the contrast of the shadows, right, to make them less basically like opacity, right, make them less dark, and then change the color. I had made them blue in here, but I did that in After Effects instead. Your choice, right? It just depends on your workflow. So the last thing before we go to After Effects, I wanted to look at another lighting setup that I was working on, and I never finished this setup, but it was a bit of fun. So let us look at it. So yes, so this is the lighting I was talking about. As I said, it wasn't complete. I decided to abandon it because I just wanted to finish the main thing. But as you can see here, I was kind of going for like a, you know, Halloween, nighttime, spooky, whatever. So again, this is a directional light. If I disable this, you'll see the kind of moonlight. As you can see, I use the temperature settings I talked about earlier. So if it was warm, it would obviously make no sense. So let's undo that. And yeah, so you can see I have some cool lighting here in the cauldron. Could add some smoke maybe. The fire also works at night in the oven. And yeah, you can see the lights coming through the pumpkins. Very nice. As I said, it's not finished. I wanted to add the shafts coming through from the top as well. And don't worry about the vials. I did put a light behind the door, but because I didn't finish it, the light shafts aren't coming through. We could make it a bit stronger, but the effect I was going for originally won't be there anyway. So very nice. As I said, this wasn't finished, but it's a fun challenge to do if you do have the time, basically to take your scene and see if you can light it in a completely different way. So this covers the lighting side of things. What I'll do quickly now is the other side of things, which is the rendering and the cameras. Honestly, it truly is simple. Once you have a camera, and as we see, I have plenty, you can create a sequence. Go to this option here, cinematic, level sequence actor, and I carried it another step further, which I'm not going through in this video because this video is already too long. But basically I use the movie render queue to render out more than one sequence, right? So if I go into this sequence, just click this button here. This is the sequence that you see at the beginning of my demo reel, right? Scrolls in. If I go to the other shot, you know, same, etc, etc. And this is also where you get to control what lights are on, what are off. You keyframe them so that they're visible or not visible when this camera is being played through the sequencer. So if I go to shot 3 and go here, you can see it automatically turned off. Well, it wasn't automatic. I set it so that these lights are on, and I did a nice little camera move. Very simple, you know. And I set up these shots. Now these shots were set up like while I was working on the project, and the reason I say that is because it helps you understand the scope of each shot. So for instance, for shot 3, I know that and for all the shots, I know the pumpkin leaves don't have to be really, really, really detailed because we never get close to them, right? So if I exit the sequencer and we cycle through these cameras, we never get super close, right? Move. Camera 1, camera 2. This is the closest we get to the pumpkins, and for that purpose, they're actually pretty good. So decisions like that, if you have your cameras set up early, you can actually make decisions like that a lot easier and better. So since I know that, I don't have to spend a lot of time on the pumpkins or any other object that I will never get close to, and other, decisions similar to that. So I created the cameras and I set up the animation. As you saw, again, it's just keyframe where you want, move the camera and the timeline, and then keyframe again. It's simple and effective. So the movie sequence, the movie render queue, is for tying together a bunch of settings, as I said. So these are some settings I have here for exporting the stills, the PNG sequence. And if I go here to this, the movie pipeline queue, the queue is what I'm talking about. You can see I have all the shots set up and where they're going, right? Very nice. And then I could change the preset if I want the 1080p one for testing or the 4K for final output. So that's how I did the renders. And yeah, so let's go on to After Effects and wrap up this video. So here I have After Effects open, and I think you can already see the difference, right? If I disable my adjustment layers, this is what we get straight out of Unreal, right? Or straight out of camera for the photographers. But this isn't finished. If we go to my adjustment layer, enable, I'm gonna zoom to 200%. I added a slight sharpness, as you can see. Well, actually it's not that slight. And then I added a color grade. And when I say added, that's a bit misleading. It's more like I added this effect and edited it to get what I want. And in this case, it was to add some blue to the shadows, right? So if I carry it back to the center, you can kind of see where it was. And I wanted that to contrast the warmth of the scene subtly. And because we have the blue in the shot, it will make those pop at least a little bit more, and in the sky. So decisions like that, they might be simple, but oh god, they go such a long way. And then I added this very subtle sharpen at the very end, just to get a little bit more out of the shot. And that's it. That's the color grade. Yeah, exactly. It's not that, it wasn't that crazy, right? Some people will go in and add like levels and curves, and like going here and it's like, oh well, I want it to be like crunch, and then I want it to have high contrasts, right? Like you can do that, like if that's what you want. But for my scene, Unreal already did such a good job. I just needed to do that like nice little color grade and sharpen, and that was legit. Let's go here. The ending, the other adjustment layer, originally it was to blur out the background, this area, as you can see, but I decided to keep it sharp in the end and have it just, continue to be in focus, because having the black background underneath was enough to allow you to read what I have on screen. So the only other thing about the rendering I'll say is, obviously because of social media, you should have a vertical version of your project. Unfortunately, you should have also planned this ahead of time. So what I did is the usual trick where you just take the thing and zoom it up and blur it out behind it. Honestly, this trick still works. Yeah. The other thing is to pan your shot because it's vertical, so you can't see everything. So what I do is I pan the shot so that you can see a bit more, right? So I start here in this shot on the left, and then I'm dragging it to the right. You can see the line here. I'm dragging it to the left, sorry, while the cameras are, it's animating already, but that drag allows the vertical shot to see a bit more than if I just left it there, like this one. All right. Anyway, so yeah, the last thing is the still images. You would think that I took the stills straight out of Unreal, but because I like the grade of what I did in After Effects, I did not do that. I took the stills straight from After Effects. So just have to go to, I believe it's composition, and save frame as file. Boom, that's my still image. In some cases, you might still want to take it from Unreal, but I'd obviously bring that in here so that I can apply the this adjustment. So yeah, so like if I go to the stills here, 4K stills, these are 1 frame long, and I brought in the image. As you can see, these are part of the image sequence, and I copied over the adjustment layer. It's exactly what I just said. So yes, that's how this was completed, the project as a whole, and the rendering, the cameras, the post-processing, and even the color grading, as you can see here at the end. Thank you for watching this video. I'm glad I was able to complete this series and show you how I did it. I hope it was educational and informative. And yeah, I hope you can create a nice environment, and this can help you along your way in some way. All right, well, that wraps up this video. So thanks for watching again. Give the video a like if you like it, I guess. And I'll see you in the next one. Respect. Protect.